The thing that makes motorcycle riders cool isn't the brand that they ride, it's the fact that they ride. So if they're riding something different, it just, I don't know, it adds to that uniqueness. I just rode all the way out to Baghdad. This is Baghdad, Arizona. This is about 150 miles from home, and I wanted to put a good day of riding on this Indian Chieftain. This is the Power Plus 112, and this thing is absolutely amazing. Now, I'm no stranger to the Indian motorcycles, their touring bike platform. I've taken the Challenger all the way from Phoenix to Boulder, Colorado, rode through some snow. I think I rode like a 10-hour day on that bike. The only thing I would change if I were, and possibly maybe, going to buy a Chieftain would be to do it in the Dark Horse. This same color with the red would be absolutely killer. The 2025s and newer actually have a blind spot monitoring system, which is this little device here. Now, when I saw that without the tour pack on the bikes, I kind of was like, I don't know, it looks like a big piece of equipment on the back. It doesn't look bad in person. As a matter of fact, I don't even notice it there in person. In photo, I notice it quite a bit. But what's really cool with this is that on the mirrors, it will actually show you, this will light up on the side, that you have somebody in your blind spot. Now, I thought that was going to be a little bit hokey, but it's actually super useful. Now, talking about the Chieftain, this is Indian's fork-mounted fairing versus the Challenger or the Pursuit, which is the frame-mounted fairing. And I think the styling on this is phenomenal. One thing I like more about the fork-mounted fairings is that it brings everything closer to the rider. You feel like you're kind of more in a bike. You feel like tucked in it, as opposed to the Pursuit. Everything feels so far away, and I really do like that quite a bit. Now, the only thing I would really say that Harley Davidson, on the Street Glide, the new Street Glides, they have this tray that comes out as like a drawer for phones, which I think is awesome. I kind of love and hate this all at the same time. I might be making some excuses for it, but this is such a small compartment that with the iPhone Pro Max, it barely fits in here. It does fit in here, but it barely fits in here. Now, the reason why, yes, that's bad, but also I find it to be kind of good, is that I am not immune to, when I'm riding, looking for my phone for Lord knows what reason. And I have found that the time that I've put on this bike, I haven't looked for my phone one time, because the thought of trying to even grab it out of that smaller compartment seems completely impossible. And it's just something I'm not really all that interested in trying to do. So I actually kind of like that. Maybe I am finding a way to excuse it away. But again, phones are a distraction, especially when you're riding, and I'm not immune to that distraction. I am merely human. Now, in terms of tour packs, the Chop tour packs look great for, I guess, stylistic purposes, but I would definitely want to go with the full-size tour pack, because I like the ability to be able to take my full-size helmet, put it in the trunk, and actually have that as a place to store a helmet. These side saddlebags, another thing that I love is that they are power locking bags, which I think is fantastic. There is a ton of space in here. If I'm gonna be out for a few days, I like the ability to be able to pack basically clothes in one bag, some tools and things that you might need on the road in the other, water, things like that in another bag, and then the top for cameras, helmets, the stuff that you might want to grab quickly. So that's the Chieftain in a nutshell. Again, huge fan of this Indian touring bike platform. The Power Plus powertrain is absolutely brilliant. I absolutely love this motor. Now, this bike does have the Stage 2 exhaust on it, which gives it a little more burble, and I think it wakes it up quite a bit. So with that, I'm going to take you guys back on the road on the way into Baghdad here. This is actually my first time ever being out here. This is something that I've wanted to do for quite a while, is take this ride, because I just know up here is absolutely beautiful and it does not disappoint. I decided to come up here golden hour to try to get some shots, but I also realized that I need to get out of here before dark, because there are also cattle out here. And I don't have much of a desire to be riding in dark around wildly roaming cattle. Seems like not a great idea. So this bike, you know, these Indian motorcycles are so awesome. I mean, I think in terms of any motorcycle I've ever ridden, including Harleys, they are just by far the most refined. Not only the most powerful, but also the most just, until you really start getting into like a Goldwing, refined experiences. And my experience with the Goldwing, be it was awesome, but it felt so muted that it just lost a lot of character of what is riding motorcycles to me, and that is the American V-twin kind of thing. And I've got to say that this Chieftain, I'm comparing it to, say, like the Pursuit, which I've ridden now a bunch of Pursuits. I haven't actually been on a Chieftain in really, I want to say, quite a few years, but I'm actually thinking that the Chieftain might be my favorite platform. Whoa, 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 whoa. Fresh oiled roads. Don't want to be getting on the brakes in the corners. I just felt the back end kick out a little bit there. Overall, this bike, though, is very, very composed. These roads being freshly oiled, I need to be very careful. I don't want to be losing this bike. It is not mine. And actually, even if it was mine, I still would not want to be losing this motorcycle. So am I super pumped that they freshly oiled this road as I'm coming in here now for my ride into Baghdad? Not really, but is what it is, and I'm not too worried about it. I'm actually going to put this into rain mode right now just because I'm on an oiled road. So we'll pop her in rain mode to tame that throttle a little bit, so I'm not accidentally spinning that rear wheel on these freshly oiled roads. Kind of getting on the brakes there to test them. It's not too bad, but there's definitely some wetter spots than others. I've put a ton of miles on the Pursuit. I'm a few hundred miles into this motorcycle, and the differences are certainly noticeable. I think the Pursuit has a better rider's bubble when it comes to the air flow, but what I really like about this Chieftain and the fork-mounted fairing over the frame-mounted fairing, I can actually get some airflow through my helmet. In terms of, again, going Chieftain to Challenger or Pursuit, you know, the fork versus frame-mounted fairing, I find that the Pursuit does such a good job of protecting the rider that it almost, in really hot conditions, is so hot in your helmet. And this is actually nice. This gives me a little bit more airflow. What's interesting is I'm feeling more airflow through my helmet, but still, with the windscreen down, which, again, anybody who's not familiar with Indians, the whole benefit of a windscreen that goes up and down is absolutely irreplaceably awesome. That's something that they've got on Harley all day long. But with it down, it's still hitting somewhere like at the top of my head. So at highway speeds, I do get like a little bit of buffeting, but it's not really that bad. It's hitting me right about at the top of the helmet. And then when I raise the windscreen, it's actually somewhere right up here above the helmet. And then I start getting some buffeting off of the bottom of the tank with the wind kind of coming up, which is a little bit interesting. But the buffeting isn't really that bad at all. I think with any motorcycle, if you put a couple hundred miles on it one way, and then you're not super like, oh man, I got to get back on it to get back the other way, then that tells you the bike is doing a pretty good job of, you know, remaining comfortable. This thing is just an amazing, amazing motorcycle. Baghdad's trying to kill motorcyclists. They got gravel, oil, all kinds of stuff here. This certainly is the Baghdad for motorcycles. And then, of course, with this new model Chieftain, this is the Power Plus, which is the liquid-cooled power plant from Indian, and it just has power for days. I'm not going to do a pull here again because oiled road, but on the highway, you can actually find yourself like I was thinking about it like this. I was like, you know, this bike has so much chill in terms of rider comfort. You could just put days on this thing and just soak up miles, but it has no chill in terms of speed. You can be doing 75 miles an hour and you just get on that throttle, and next thing you know, you are just gone. This thing has no chill when it comes to power, and if I were to buy one, which I think I will at some point, be trading in my Harley with this platform, I love it so much that I think I will be going to the Indian platform. Now, another thing I want to talk about, which is recent news of Indian Motorcycles splitting off from Polaris. Polaris sold off a majority of their of Indian Motorcycles to a private equity firm, which is really interesting. And a lot of people there's just of course naturally a lot of conversation around it because of the Harley fanboys. But one thing I like most about Indian, and the reason why I think they will be successful, is that the product, it speaks for itself. The only people who really talk down on Indian motorcycles are people who haven't ridden them. I say that because they are such a fantastic platform that it would be very hard, even as a Harley fanboy, to talk shit about it after you had a chance to put down some miles on them. Now that Harley Davidson has gone full digital display, I'm not an anti-digital person. You know, a lot of people are like, oh, it's a screen and it's gonna break, and I'm not super anti the digital thing, but I do like the analog gauges on a motorcycle. It helps add back a little bit of what a lot of these modern fuel-injected motorcycles take out of the visceral experience of motorcycles. You know, when it comes to motorcycles, you know, you kind of want to have a sense of mechanical machinery. These gauges kind of help give you that back a little bit while still getting ride command and having all of the digital experience, especially Apple CarPlay, which I think is just absolutely phenomenal. I'm not going to get super crazy into a review of the whole ride command system, but it is phenomenal. All in, I think that this platform, this bike in particular, might be my favorite Indian that I have ever ridden. I think if it came time for me to have to make a purchase, I would still be a little bit on the fence between this and the Pursuit, but as I'm riding this one right now, I'm trying not to have recency bias. I mean, I think most people will say their favorite motorcycle is the one that they're currently riding, and I try really hard to like not have that be the case when I'm talking about these things. It gets to be really easy when you're on the one you're on to be like, this one's the best. So, you know, I've got to say though, this is up there. I very, very much love this bike. Rain mode actually does really tame this thing down quite a bit. The snappiness it's a lot more chill. So I was just saying that on the highway, this thing has no chill in terms of throttle. You can go from 70 to 90 instantaneously, but you know, with it in rain mode, it's much better. I would still ride with it in the standard mode. My experience with the Indian motorcycles is when you go to sport mode, it almost makes the throttle too twitchy. But the difference between rain mode and standard mode is it's there, and I actually kind of like the tameness of it. At least going through that oiled road, it was nice to have that and take out a little bit of that edge off of that throttle. But man, what a beautiful place. What are we at? 3:40. We still got an hour and a half or so before we lose daylight, and that's mainly what I want to try to avoid, is like coyotes and things like that. Once I get about an hour looped back around, heading back down south, this should be a much better, safer ride in the dark. And I'll be interested to see what the headlight does on this bike. I've had the experience of riding the Pursuit, and that thing lights up the night sky. I mean, it's a fantastic lighting setup. This one with a single headlight, I'm assuming still being LED, that it's going to be absolutely phenomenal. Peter Santinello did a whole video on Baghdad, and I will link that up above. I suggest you go check it out. He kind of covers the whole history. That's not my intent here on the channel. I just wanted to cruise up here on you know, a little adventure up to Baghdad and see what it was all about. You gotta love a spot when the diner is just called the diner. That's what you get in these little towns. We gotta stop and grab some gas. Whoa! Good suspension on these guys. Whoa! Always struggle to find the gas pop here. Where is it? go back down Mario Kart Road. I don't mind riding at night generally, but then we're talking about two-lane highway where you have to worry about people that are trying to pass other people on the highway, maybe not paying attention to oncoming traffic. And that's one thing, the difference between the frame-mounted fairing versus fork-mounted fairing is the headlight difference. I do like, and that's a big contributing factor to why, if I really go this route, I might consider the frame-mounted over the fork-mounted. And I would do the same with Harley Davidson, is having that wider headlight on the front, because when cars are coming on to you, which is also the reason why the left turning is such a big problem with motorcycles, is they only see that one dot. And when they see that one dot, it just looks like a car that is super far down the road as opposed to one that's close up. So it kind of messes with people's depth perception and causes problems. And when you have the wider headlights, that kind of takes up for some of that. The big reason why I went with the Heritage with my Harley Davidson is because it also has those passing lamps and then also the amber turn signals up front, which just gives it a wider, more pronounced profile coming head on. And I like that quite a bit. So that's something I've always taken into consideration. Alright, now that's ideal with the sun to our backs. Go back to standard mode. And there you can see, there's my blind spot monitoring, telling me someone's coming up on the side. That's actually really nice. Alright, fire up Apple CarPlay and just start jamming some miles. The sun's going down. Man, what a beautiful place. Another nice thing about these Chieftain and just these full-size touring bikes is built-in TPMS. So when you come off like that oiled chipped road like that, just making sure you didn't pick up any nails or anything like that as they're doing construction work. You always got to worry about things like that, picking up fresh road debris from those construction crews. So it's very comforting, especially when you're out here bombing 80 miles an hour on your way home, that if you started losing tire pressure, you would get a heads up. These are the areas that I'm talking about when you start merging into kind of a funneled two-lane highway. It can start to get a little bit dodgy. I usually, in a 65 mile an hour zone, I like to cruise, especially in Arizona. It's 80 miles an hour is pretty standard, but this time of day I'll kind of back it down. As I'm editing this video, I realize I come across as a complete like Indian fanboy diehard. I still own my 2018 Harley Davidson Heritage 114 and I absolutely love this motorcycle. I am not anti-Harley even in the least bit, but in recent years, I think I have just started to really despise tribalism across the board, whether it be politics, product identities. I'm starting to get annoyed by some of the tribalism of Harley Davidson, which is ironic. I'm talking about Indian motorcycles, but there's just so many people out there that just are Harley fanboys just because they feel it's like an insecurity where if they don't, I guess, stay on that bandwagon, that they're going to be shunned by the rest of their tribe. And that's something that I just think is silly and I just don't subscribe to. I just don't care. I honestly feel like that's a cooler mentality when it comes to motorcycles than being somebody who feels like they need to ride a brand, otherwise their friends are not going to accept them into their group. It's kind of a weak mentality in my opinion. So I'm going to make a whole video on that coming up in the near future. It's going to come across as clickbait, but this is something that's been on my mind for honestly probably a couple of years now, and it probably warrants an entire video to maybe elaborate on that a little bit more. So with that being said, thank you guys very much for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in, please hit that subscribe button down below. Remember, likes go a long way to help support the channel. See you guys next time.